Good afternoon, everyone. I am Monica Modi-Delwadi, the managing partner of Baker Tilly's DC Metro office. At Baker Tilly, our goal is to enhance and protect the value of our clients through accounting, tax, and advisory services. It is my pleasure to be here with you for our first DC Conscious Capitalism hot seat discussion. For those of you who are just getting familiar with conscious capitalism, it's a way of thinking about capitalism and business that better reflects where we are in the human journey, the state of our world today, and the innate potential of businesses to make a positive impact on the world. In DC, where I have the honor of sitting on the executive committee of our board here, we believe that we elevate humanity through business. Our mission is to connect, inspire, and activate others in the community. We hope that together we can inform and create change in business culture. Conscious businesses really evolve our world so that billions of people can flourish, lead, just lives infused with passion, purpose, love, and creativity. Now I'm going to introduce you to our esteemed panelists here, Dan and Stephen. When it comes to bios, Dan Simons knows it's usually just the highlight reel, which I'll do a little of how he got here today, but some fun facts in there as well. So you know that he's the co-founder and co-owner of the Farmers Restaurant Group, which includes Farmers, Fishers, Bakers, and Farmers and Distillers, and Founding Spirits Distillery. I can also tell you that his journey here has not been a straight line in any way for what he's done. He was jobless at one point. He lived in his mother-in-law's basement for 3 years when starting his business. And his first restaurant failed. He lost all of his money. He felt lost, experienced self-doubt, and teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. His journey continues to have ups and downs as the pandemic has been crushing the restaurants as it has been on the industry as a whole. But he and his team are rebuilding the company, rehiring staff, and focusing on the future. He blogs at dansimonsays.com and is a vocal advocate and support for mental health in the workplace. I know I, for one, can't wait to get back into one of Dan's restaurants one day soon. Similarly to Dan, Stephen Baldi's path to becoming founder and president of Baldi Management Group was as non-traditional as their current portfolio of airport concessions locations, including national franchise brands like Dunkin' Donuts, Potbelly, and Smashburger. After graduating from Georgetown in '99, Stephen spent 2 years working full-time as a DJ and a doorman for DC club locations like Felix, Blue Room, and the 18th Street Lounge. In 2002, he stepped away from his career in nightlife and began leasing apartments for $11 an hour in Springfield, Virginia, in order to support his 3-year-old son, Langston. His earnings that year were just over $19,000. By 2005, he has worked his way through the ranks of real estate developer and took a position as the general manager of concessions at the National Airport. 2008, he founded the Baldi Management Group with a $15,000 loan from his parents. Stephen, I can't wait to fly again and enjoy all of those concessions. As a part of today's discussion, Stephen would like to first acknowledge that, in his opinion, there's no one clear action that we can take forward, and that success and improved race relations must start with open, honest, and difficult self-exploration of who we are individually and how that builds or destroys our collective ability to honor the commitment of created equal. I think that's just so powerful and amazing to be able to share with all of you. I know Stephen and Dan are ready to just jump into this conversation, but before they start to speak, they're going to ask you to do a little something for them. So close your eyes. I know you've stared at screens all the time, but you can do it. Close your eyes for an initial minute. They're going to walk you through a short exercise. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Stephen and Dan.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here and with your eyes closed. At this time, we are asking that you please continue to have your eyes closed and remove your thoughts that you may have from the day, the week, the year, that may be top of mind. And as you do this, we ask that you try to take yourself to as close to a place of nothingness as possible. Now that you have done so, allow yourself, please, with your eyes remaining closed, to listen and fully embrace how the following statements land for you emotionally. Is saying Jew the same as saying nigger?
I think rich white families adopt black kids to make themselves feel better.
How do I talk to a community of Black people effectively?
It was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Is the Netflix show Dear White People a good place for me to get my education?
Broken windows and property damage to a restaurant are trivial when compared to the breaking of people based on their skin color. So thanks for listening. Open your eyes. And in a short word or phrase, think about what came to mind for you, a feeling you had, an emotion you had, a reaction that you had. And whatever that word or phrase is that you were thinking as you heard or felt those words that you heard being said, you can type those into the chat screen. Monica, everybody has a chat box that they can type into, right? So great. So just type that word or phrase, any reaction you might have had to what you heard being spoken. And later on in our discussion, we will, we're going to refer back to that. We'll read some of the things that you've written down, and it'll help us dig a little deeper into our discussion.
And just to walk you through why we did that exercise, obviously everyone here has made the commitment to be here. But in preparation for this talk, Dan and I thought it was a priority for us to make sure that we as the guest, but also you as the participants, were emotionally engaged for such a emotion-filled topic. And so we appreciate you doing that with us. I'm very interested to see the words and emotions that people communicated at the end. And what I'll say to you now is that it's all critical if you're going to take a deep dive into the conversation that we plan on doing today. With that said, we'd like to answer the big question about, as a conscious business, what is your role in systemic injustice? But first, Dan and I have thought about some questions that we want to ask each other as a build up to that final kind of summary. So I get to ask Dan the first question. Dan, what's a personal failure or shortcoming of yours personally that affected your company?
There's no doubt that I, over the years, have failed or fallen short in my ability to see Black male talent. It's interesting for me. I've known it for quite a long time. It's something that we've been working on intentionally for the last couple of years. And specifically, I contrast that with my own ability to see female Black talent. And my company, our company, reflects the positive ability when we can see, clearly we have no problem seeing talent breaking down by gender because our company is full of powerful women. We also have a lot of women of color, Black and Latinx leaders, Latina leaders. But when I look at our company and I say, as you go up that pyramid, if you were using a color, sort of shading to represent, it gets lighter and lighter. And then if you break it down by gender, I've really fallen short with seeing that Black male talent. And I've had mentors say to me as I've been on this journey over the past several years, it's not because the talent isn't there. It's because I can't see it. And so that's, I know the first step in fixing something is acknowledging that and falling short, and saying it out loud is one way to really put some wind in the sails and making sure that I'm fixing it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Baldi. So I should, obviously your name is Stephen, right? But we're friends.
If they're not looking at my last name, they think you're insulting me right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Stephen's last name is Baldi, and that's what I call him. My question for you, and it's nice that we haven't, prepared this, right? So we get to really think about it, with one another. But can one Black person represent all Black people on topics of, questions about race? I've noticed, especially lately, a lot of white folks are kind of rushing around to either find their one black friend or get one black friend, and then want to have a conversation as if that one black person is an expert on diversity. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Well, listen, I appreciate the question. And all I can do is share my own perspective. And I would say that no, there's no one person, black, white, or other, that I think has the information to provide the solutions for going forward. Someone told me a long time ago, follow the people who seek the truth, question those who say they have found it. And so it's really convenient and understandable that a lot of people recently have kind of expanded their circle of concern to include social injustice, white against black policing. You know, the images of George Floyd were really disturbing. But I think that in order for you to really truly engage in the process of evolving, that you just can't call up or try to engage a person of color that you may come in contact with. I know you and I have had some really deep conversations, some really uncomfortable conversations, but it's started from a foundation of you and I getting to know each other and build our relationship first. And I think that is actually the only way to build real conversation and be able to evolve.
I have a follow-up. So you're black, it makes you an expert in being you. Does it make you an expert in blackness?
I would say that there are some experiences that are shared within being African-American, black, or however you decide to identify yourself. But I would tell you, interestingly, even this whole current moment in history, I have a 21-year-old son. His name is Langston. He's a junior at Davidson College, and we are very close. But about 2 days ago, we almost killed each other because we were so vehemently disagreeing about the path forward and what you should do as individuals and what we should do as a country. And I would say, again, you know, a lot of people's circle of concerns have expanded, but if you really want to be a part of the moment, I say what you have an obligation to do is to participate first in your circle of influence, the things that you have immediate access to. You don't have to necessarily go out and start something brand new. The answer for how you can partake in this moment might be right there in front of you. And so I would say, don't shy away from that, but also like, don't expect one person, black, white, elected office or not, to have the answer, because not one person brought us to this moment.
Well said, thank you.
I think I feel like I owe you two questions because you got me with a follow-up one that I wasn't prepared for, but I will get you back later if not today. How did you get so comfortable? Because you and I have had a lot of conversations, right, about some uncomfortable topics. How did you get comfortable, or do you think you're comfortable in talking about race? And if so, how did you become comfortable?
I would say I am comfortable. I would say I am very comfortable being uncomfortable when it comes to talking about race, and that what I have built over the years is the acceptance of myself, that the trust in myself, that my intentions are good. I know I don't have all the answers, and that I need to have strong relationships so that I can have conversations, that in those conversations, I might say some stupid shit or offend somebody or ask a question that just makes someone go like, are you kidding me? And so, you know, some of that is, I think, you know, how I was raised, right? Being the youngest of four kids, if you don't have the courage to ask your question and have your older siblings tell you you're an idiot, then you end up silent. So I've been told I'm an idiot enough times by my siblings that, you know, just speak up. But several years ago, I was working on a restaurant about, you know, our restaurant brands talk about the founding of America and founding farmers, but also founding fathers. And there's a tremendous amount of painful and awful, racist, deep history with the founding of America. And so I wanted to not whitewash that. And so I reached out and got some mentors. Dr. Hippolyte, who works at the Smithsonian, that focuses on African American history. She was able to sit with me several times and have lunch, and I was able to ask questions. And, I used to refer in American history to people who were slaves. And, she politely said to me, the way that it's probably better to say that is to refer to them as enslaved people. And she explained why, right? Like, they are people that something happened to, as opposed to being this thing, the slave. And so with mentors like that, who are just wise and nice, so I think that because I've tried to surround myself or reached out for people who can accept my ignorance and are willing to teach me, that's how I've gotten comfortable. So it's uncomfortable. And so I don't know, does someone prefer Black or African American? I can ask them, or I can just pick one and say it and make them feel comfortable enough that if they identify with a different word or they prefer a different word, they'll tell me and I'll go with it. So I think those are the ways that I've gotten to kind of where I am with it now.
And I love that, because one of our attendees had asked the question, what recommendations do you have for us to engage and do better when we're concerned that we might say the wrong thing? We might say some stupid shit in your words there. But I wanted to jump in because you're talking about these important conversations. And there was a question about, since this is conscious capitalism, what are the most important conversations business leaders can be having right now about systemic injustice and racism?
Well, this is, I think, what's great about this moment, which is just have a conversation.
Right.
I don't think that there's a prescriptive answer to that other than silence is part of the continued problem, right? Because silence is an acceptance of the status quo. There are problems with the status quo. So have the question and know that the person you're asking to may not be an expert, and your preface can be, hey, I want to ask you a question that I'm not sure if it's okay to ask. Most people say back to that, go ahead. And then you have framed kind of a structural safe environment for your question. But I guess the most important thing is asking people how they feel and why they feel that way. And that's what then can lead you to understanding the views of someone else, and potentially doing something about it.
And Dan, if I could just add on to what you just commented, again, I think the important thing to do is, one, realize that this is not a sprint. I know there's been a lot of action recently, but this moment has to go past the next 90 days. It may have to be the next 900 days. And so if you haven't already put in the time to build a relationship with someone, to have an open, honest, and authentic conversation, discussion about this topic, start there. Like, do not jump into how can I make a difference when this may be the first time that we've spoken and we've been working in the same office environment for 2 years. Like that will show up as an inauthentic gesture and probably won't provide the outcome that you're looking for.
If your marketing department was sitting around in June thinking about your 4th of July marketing plan for whatever product your company sells, and there were, you have African-American team members sitting there and everybody's talking about 4th of July, it's highly likely that they were thinking to themselves, anybody know what Juneteenth is? But nobody's going to bring that up unless they actually get asked in a really genuine way, that, hey, is there anything we're missing right now? Is there anything that our friendship is missing? And if you don't get a definitive answer, then realize you're not getting an honest answer, right? I mean, the stuff that Baldi and I have learned about each other over our friendship and the questions we've asked, it's the level of ignorance that we have about one another's cultures, if we want to say that there's a Black culture or a Jewish culture or a white culture or however you want, the level of ignorance that even that friends have, let alone the level of ignorance that just coworkers have, let alone the level of ignorance that strangers have, about one another's lived experience, you got to talk.
Got to talk.
So Baldi,
And I just, before you jump into that one, I just wanted to share one thing that was here because it resonated with me so much. And I think you brought it out because of what you're both sharing. So one of our audience members shared that for me as a Black male, it's as simple as making me feel comfortable in expressing myself, to share my experiences without fear of judgment or reprisal. For the majority of my career, I haven't been able to do that from fear of being viewed as an angry Black man simply for speaking out when I perceived an injustice. Just thought that was so powerful.
So powerful. And I mean, look, it was 3 years ago that I was asking a mentor about where do I recruit Black male talent? And he said two things to me that is just embarrassing to admit, but important. First, he said, well, how's your recruiting program at the HBCUs? And I said, what's an HBCU? I mean, he almost fell out of his chair. But what I now know is I need to tell people there are historically Black colleges and universities, and that's a thing, right? And you know, like there's a reason that you can put that as a category and you can recruit there and find talent. And the other thing he said to me, the place to find that Black male talent, he said, just open your eyes. I guarantee you it's right in front of you. You got 1,000 employees, you know? You think you don't have that talent there, you don't see it. So Baldi, what as a business, what is a business's responsibility, if any, as it relates to, you know, systemic injustice?
Yeah, I will circle back again to the point, not to reiterate it, but I think it first starts with, you know, addressing honestly and authentically, immediately, your immediate circle of influence. I would tell you in my own business, and I really feel like I'm on a hot seat now because what I'm about to say is making me go up in temperature. It's hard for me as a Black man to think that I have the potential to be racist, because if you ask most Black people, the treatment of us as a group of people in this country over our history is so toxic and, in our opinion, so devastating that any way that we respond to another race, we perceive it to be more reasonable than racist. And so if I take action against another group, it's almost a consensus that, well, because we've been treated this way, I don't have the ability to be racist. I'm just responding in a reasonable way to how I've been treated. I've tried to, at moments, even though I have felt that way, also challenge myself to say, well, where are my blind spots? What are the things that I don't know that I don't know? Am I taking action as a business owner that are resulting in unintended consequences? And so, you know, recently I thought about the last restaurant we opened, which was Smash Burger at Reagan Airport. I made it a priority. And at this point, I was still interviewing most of the people that we hired. I made it a priority to bring in talent from Southeast Washington, D.C., because I thought as a group of residents, that particular area of D.C. was often not given an opportunity. And so the unintended consequence, I'm sure, now reflecting back, is if I saw a resume that had an address that I knew was Southeast D.C., in some ways I probably prioritized them over everyone else. Is that racist? If another qualified individual that's Ethiopian or from Guatemala was applying for the same position, but I chose that person from Washington, D.C., I don't know that I can honestly and confidently answer that, but I'm aware that that was a priority, which may have had unintended consequences. So I say, as a conscious capitalist, if you really want to participate in this moment and affect change, look at the practices that your businesses are doing. Honestly, have someone outside of your organization look at your practices. Don't just trust your team, because in a lot of ways, you know, there is group thinking, and you want to challenge yourself to get outside opinions that aren't vested in the decisions that you are making. And so that's where I would start. I'm sure there's a lot of other opinions of how you could also do it, but that's where I would start. And as the leader of my company, have actually began to take intentional action in that way.
But Baldi, is it an obligation? Like, are you saying that a business, to exist as a business, has an obligation to, at a minimum, pay attention to the systemic? And some people may argue with me that systemic injustice exists. I think those people are just bonkers, but we need to engage them. Is it a business's obligation, or what about when the business is just like, I'm colorblind?
So I'm going to quote Tupac. Do you know who Tupac is, Dan?
I do.
So Tupac once said that if I lose you as a friend, that does not mean that I have gained you as an enemy. And I still want you to eat, just not at my table. And what I think he meant by that is he was agreeing to be disagreeable. In that two people or two businesses or multiple people have misalignments, but let's just agree to coexist, but just not together. And that's where a lot of people are right now. And if that's where you're at authentically, then that's where you're at. In this moment, that's not where I'm at. The same artist also said, I ain't a killer, but don't push me. And if you can get by the imagery of a 25-year-old bald head black man saying that, and that he literally didn't mean he would murder you, but what he was more highlighting is that action and reactions are not often dispositional, but they are influenced by the things that are happening around you. And right now, everyone is aware of a lot of things that have been happening around us. And so if you're not willing to participate and react intentionally, for a lot of people who are trying to change this moment, we'll let you have that position, but you're in our way. And if we have to move you because we feel like we've been pushed around, out, excluded, then everyone involved just has to kind of be willing to accept the outcomes. And so you've got to decide that for yourself authentically. But I think we are past the point where you're either racist or not racist or neutral. There's no neutral in this moment. You're either in the fight or you're in the way.
Yeah.
I think we need a lot more Tupac quotes in all of our lives for sure. There is no doubt about that one. I'm gonna there's this question here for both of you for the hot seat. In really wanting to understand, how are you talking with your employees about racial justice? How are you having that conversation? I think a lot of people are afraid to bring it up because they're worried, Dan, like you said, maybe they don't agree that it exists.
Yeah, I mean, well, it starts with you need to have a relationship with people, with your employees, that when you ask a question, they believe that you care. So, showing up all of a sudden with the questions that you printed up off the internet, because like you need to be a more conscious leader doesn't work. I think you got to sit down with people and understand that work is also part of your personal life. And I think my advice in the business setting is to still say to someone, how are you feeling on the topics that everybody is so focused on right now with race? And I recognize that just because it's on the front page of the newspaper today doesn't mean it hasn't been on the front page of your newspaper for a long time. But I really care and I want to know what's on your mind. I think that's, if you say that in an authentic way, it starts the conversation. So my advice in the business setting is start the conversation by asking a question and don't say too much. Like one mouth, two ears, and then just shut up and listen and don't interrupt and stay quiet for a lot longer than you usually do, because you're potentially talking to someone who is used to either being silenced or staying silent on an issue. So you've got to be a really good listener.
I actually don't have anything to add to what you just said, and I appreciate your authenticity in that response, Dan.
Baldi, should we tell people about, kind of our thoughts with those statements that we made in the beginning and what those words were like coming out of our mouth? And, we can read in the chat screen, and I know everybody can actually see a lot of those comments, but you want to give your thoughts on what those words were like, knowing how folks reacted?
Yeah, well, I can't see how people reacted, and I will be honest, I'm so tech challenged that I'm scared if I check on this chat box that I'll lose everybody else. So I ain't looking at it. If you want to read to me what it says, we'll do that. But I will tell you in the moment, so full disclosure, the comments that we read back were actual conversations that Dan and I had. And we won't communicate who said what, but a lot of them were really uncomfortable. But you and I have put in the work to accept that even though what may be about to come out of my mouth might be ridiculous and or offensive and or both, we had already put in the work to know that this was coming from an authentic place to say, I don't know. And I'm asking for your support in evolving. And so even if it's uncomfortable, actually, if you're serious about this moment, it should be a requirement to be uncomfortable because the subject is uncomfortable, which is why we don't talk about it, which is why this has been a recurring theme in our history for a long time. And I got to tell you this, if we don't take it seriously, we could look back in 10 years like Occupy Wall Street protesters or people who were devastated about Sandy Hook after President Obama had to eulogize, 26 and 7-year-old children. If we're not serious about this moment, we'll have a situation where the national attention has been captured, but nothing gets done. And I personally, starting with me, I'm not in a position where I can comfortably say that I'm okay with that. And I know it starts with me and being honest with myself to say that I haven't done enough. As a Black man, Black business owner, I have not done enough. But I've made a commitment to be better and try to inspire and influence the people immediately that I can.
I pulled up the chat stream so I can see the comments, and the words, I would say, Baldi, range from all the reactions that we maybe hoped and expected that people to have. And I think that by hopefully everybody realizing that they didn't necessarily know whose voice was whose, right? That words mean different things coming out of different people's mouths. And words can be confusing when they come out of someone's mouth versus someone else, or if you have what you as a listener are attaching as intention to a word. There was definitely some confusion, some comments about how the word Jew and the N-word could be equated or why. And I know we're pretty much out of time, but I want to give a tidbit of an example of that, right? Where, when we talked about that, it was a genuine question. So like some people have heard the word, in some people's lived experience, they've only heard the word Jew delivered in a nasty, mean way, such that the listeners assume it's a slur and don't use it. And so I just wanted to give a little context to that word. And so you're only going to get there if you talk to people that have different lived experience than you. And I think that it is every business leader's obligation to find ways to get on one side or the other. I think Kendi's words, right? You're a racist or you're an anti-racist. When I read that book last year, it just struck me. It strikes me as much today as it did when I first read the book. And as a business person, we can make money, build the life that we want, take risks, do all of these sorts of things, have this opportunity, but we do it on the streets of the public community and on the shoulders of the workers. And if indeed there is systemic injustice, and make no mistake about it, there is systemic injustice. And if you think there isn't, look deeper. And if you know people who think there isn't, help them see it. And as business leaders, we can be a force for remarkable amounts of good. And that's what conscious capitalism is. I think business can be one of the most powerful forces for good that's out there. And it can also do a lot of evil. And I think business leaders need to recognize that, especially the ones who, when they hear these words, think, no, I'm colorblind. Being colorblind is bullshit. Don't be colorblind. See it all. Notice it and get involved with it.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, Stephen. I think everybody who participated today, they want to make a difference, want to make a change. I can see that from the comment box. And one thing that I love about Zoom is that you can get everyone's thoughts live as they're coming up. And so you have a poll that came up. I'd just love to get a quick feedback on that poll. It wouldn't take you more than a minute. I'm going to ask you to follow #ConsciousCapitalismDC on LinkedIn and Twitter to receive event updates. And you'll be able to give some feedback as well. So thank you so much for participating. We're seeing a lot of absolutely, I walked away inspired, and really it was a good discussion. So have a great Thursday, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Dan, I'll see you in the pickleball court.
See you, Stephen. Thanks, Monica.
Bye-bye.